Last week, we began making links between politics, gender, and sexuality by examining the feminist sex wars, and gained an appreciation not only of the different variants of feminism, but also of the contested understandings around female sexuality, particularly since the sexual revolution in the West. Are women truly exercising choice in their decisions regarding their sexual behavior, reflecting gender equality between women and men? Or are women still victimized in a male-dominated system where they have internalized their submissiveness and have remained objects of male sexual desire? This week, we extend our examination to the global context and delve into the culture wars in order to flesh out further the linkages between politics, gender, and sexuality, and to make clear that even if women's equality has progressed in many parts of the world, and indeed, even if we see equality as a central feature in the way we go about our own lives as women and men, conservative reactionary movements, both within and outside of the West, have arisen, seeking to reverse, or in the case of more traditional societies, explicitly reject, sexual reforms. As Mottier tells us, the AIDS crisis of the 1980s brought socially conservative ideas in the West back to the fore, leading to the resurgence of the moral or religious model of sexuality. The use of the term culture wars is a reference, conventionally speaking, to conflicts between progressive liberal ideas and conservative reactionary ones. However, the understanding of culture wars can also include conflicts between Western and non-Western cultures. In many parts of the post-colonial or developing world, conservative ideas have gained traction with the characterization of Western culture as sex-obsessed, morally degenerate, and offensively individualistic, along with the view of feminism as another example of Western imperialism. Moreover, as many countries in the West, such as Canada and the United States, have become more culturally diverse with immigration coming from Asia, Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East, and clashes around culture and debates on multiculturalism have arisen and indeed have become more pronounced since 9/11. The contested terrain, the site of culture wars, is control of sexual behavior, specifically that of women and sexual minorities such as homosexuals and bisexuals. Whether we are talking about attempts by backbench members of Canada's Conservative Party to reopen the abortion debate by introducing private members' bills, such as the one in fall 2012 by Conservative MP Stephen Woodworth, which called for a special committee to review the Criminal Code of Canada's definition of a child, which is defined as a human being only once she or he is born. Or about U.S. presidential elections in the last 3 decades, where abortion and same-sex rights have remained points of contention. Or about governments such as Afghanistan, Iran, or Uganda, which have worked to curtail women's rights and criminalize homosexuality. Or even about societal or familial proclamations around women's virginity, chastity, and marriageability, as well as the deprogramming of homosexuality. Controlling sexual behavior is key. For those of us who relish our sexual freedoms and celebrate sexual diversity, what are we to do? We began talking about Nussbaum's conception of feminism last week, and this week we extend our understanding by looking at her capabilities model. As we will see, Nussbaum's model is a universalist one, and it is essentially a call to action to address global gender inequalities in the face of cultural objections. I've asked you to read the last 2 chapters of Mottier's book, with the exception of her discussion on eugenics in Chapter 4, as well as most of Chapter 1 of Nussbaum's book. I have 3 primary goals in this module. First, I want you to keep in mind that although the focus of this course is largely on heterosexual relationships, and thus the focus is on sexual relations between a man and a woman, the resistance to homosexuality is part of a larger conservative reactionary movement that seeks to also curtail women's rights. It is not surprising, for example, that the voices who condemn homosexual behavior are the same ones who want to limit women's reproductive rights. Second, I want you to appreciate that the participation of women is crucial to the propagation of traditional attitudes about family and culture, so that it is not a simple case of women versus men, or female submission or victimization and male dominance when we talk about culture wars. Indeed, our foray into this should put to rest any misconception that the realization of feminist goals is strictly or primarily the endeavor of women, but that men must be involved in addressing gender inequality. In effect, what we will see is that women are implicated in the propagation of culture or religion as a defense against women's rights. Third, I want you to understand what a universal project like Nussbaum's capabilities model means for the importance of wage labor outside of the home, the centrality of individual choice, the usefulness of the state as an instrument of change, and the responsibilities of individuals in positions of privilege to address inequality, particularly gender inequality. Taking responsibility, as I stated last week, is part of Nussbaum's conception of feminism, as is mine. We delve into the culture wars in this module not only to bring out the assumptions that underpin Nussbaum's capabilities model, but also to highlight the divide between Western liberal ideas and conservative reactionary forces located both within and outside of the West. As the promotion of sexual freedoms and the acceptance of sexual diversity become more the norm in many of our lives in the West, we need to recognize the forces of resistance that, under the guise of protecting traditional family values or preserving traditional culture, undermine women's rights and the rights of lesbians and gay men.